Hello and welcome. My name is Lisa Eggert and I'm from Delta Dental. I will be going over the presentation today to give you more information about your dental plan. Our goal today is to help you understand key terms, your 2021 cost share information, which providers offer the best value to you, how your cost share works, and resources that would be available to you. We tried to pull out terms here that would be helpful for you to have a definition, and we'll be talking about these terms on later slides. The first term is coinsurance. Coinsurance is a fixed percentage of the cost that you share with the retirement system. A deductible is the amount that you pay each year before your retirement system begins to pay. And for 2021, it will be the same as it currently is. Your annual maximum is the most that your retirement system dental plan will pay in a calendar year for diagnostic and preventative services, basic services, and major services. The orthodontic lifetime maximum is the most that the retirement system dental plan will pay for orthodontic services for the entire time that you're enrolled in the plan. And lastly, coordination of benefits. This is the way in which claims pay when there is more than one dental benefits plan. Your retirement system dental plan uses the carve-out method to process COB claims. Visit deltadentalmi.com/MPSERS or contact Delta Dental for more information if you have more than one plan. Moving on, let's take a look at your 2021 cost share information. Your cost share is a percentage of the approved amount and any applicable deductible. As you can see from this table, there are two column headers. The first is the Delta Dental PPO dentist, and the second is Delta Dental Premier or non-participating dentist. The type of dentist that you choose determines how the claim will pay. So for example, when you have diagnostic and preventative services, such as cleanings and exams, if you go to a Delta Dental PPO provider, you will have a 5% coinsurance. When you go to a Delta Dental Premier or non-participating dentist, you'll have a 10% coinsurance. For x-rays, it's a 5% coinsurance for Delta Dental PPO dentist, and for Delta Dental Premier and non-participating, it's a 25% coinsurance. So you have a higher level of benefit when you utilize a Delta Dental PPO dentist. Under the basic services, this is really where the majority of the dental services are done. This is categorized as restorative services, but this covers such services as fillings, periodontal services, endodontic services, crowns, oral surgery. All of those fall into this basic services category. As you can see, under the Delta Dental PPO dentist, fillings have a lower coinsurance, which is a higher level of benefit, at 20% than when you go to a Delta Dental Premier or non-participating dentist, where it's 25%. All of the other services that I mentioned are covered at a 25% coinsurance for both the PPO dentist and the Delta Dental Premier or non-participating dentist. As you will see, there's also a deductible that is applied to basic services when you go to a Delta Dental Premier or a non-participating dentist. Under the major services category, these are prosthodontic services. So prosthodontic services would be things like bridges and dentures. Those are a 50% coinsurance when you go to a Delta Dental PPO dentist and a 50% coinsurance when you go to a Delta Dental Premier or non-participating provider. This category of service also includes implants. As you will see here, there's also a deductible that is applied to major services when you go to a Delta Dental Premier or non-participating dentist. Your maximums and your deductible. The annual maximum is a calendar year maximum. So that goes from January 1 to December 31st every year. There's an $1,100 annual maximum that is available for each member covered under your plan. This annual maximum applies to diagnostic and preventive services, basic services, and major services. And it's available for your use between January 1 and December 31st. If you use all of your benefit throughout the year, then you can continue to have services, but the plan, the retirement system, will no longer make any payment on your claims. If you don't use any of your benefit during that year, that benefit goes away and everybody starts over with a new $1,100 annual maximum on January 1. The orthodontic lifetime maximum is a benefit available to your dependents. This applies for all orthodontic benefits and is a $1,200 lifetime max. So the lifetime max is paid out once during your coverage underneath the retirement system's dental plan, and it's a $1,200 lifetime maximum. And then lastly, the annual deductible. The annual deductible is a calendar year deductible. This is $50 per person, and this deductible applies to basic and major services that are provided by a dentist that's not in the Delta Dental PPO network. So if you remember the slide on the previous page, it applies to claims from a Delta Dental Premier and a non-participating provider in the basic and major services. Once you've paid the $50, it's done for the year, and then the next calendar year you'll start over again. Is there a way to receive an estimate for the services that I need to have completed? A pre-treatment estimate submitted to Delta Dental by your provider allows you to learn about your treatment options and will provide information on your out-of-pocket cost. When this pre-treatment estimate is sent to Delta Dental, the estimate looks at a variety of things. It looks at what is the current annual maximum available at the time that that pre-estimate is processed, what are the time limitations for those services, and it looks at whether the service is covered by the retirement system's dental plan. A copy of the estimate will be provided to both you and your provider, and that will allow you to have a conversation with your provider to look at your treatment options. This is not a requirement to do, but I would recommend, if you have a service that's over a couple $100s, to have this done so that you know what your out-of-pocket cost will be. Providers that offer the best value. As I mentioned on a previous slide, the type of provider that you go to determines how your claim will pay. Under the dental plan, it allows you to have the freedom to choose any type of provider. You can go to a Delta Dental PPO provider, you can go to a Delta Dental Premier provider, or you can go to a non-participating provider. However, your retirement system dental plan is designed to offer the maximum benefit with the lowest out-of-pocket expense when you use a Delta Dental PPO dentist. This is because all claims are reimbursed or will be reimbursed at the PPO approved amount. So when you go to a Delta Dental Premier or non-participating provider, you will likely pay more. So let's look at each of these types of providers separately. The Delta Dental PPO providers, as I mentioned, you will save the most money when you go to a Delta Dental PPO provider. These providers accept Delta Dental's PPO approved amount as payment in full. So you will only be responsible for your coinsurance. There is no balance billing, which means that they cannot bill you the difference between what they normally charge for those services and what the PPO approved amount is. And providers are paid directly. So you're responsible for your coinsurance and we pay the providers directly. As I mentioned earlier, you have the highest level of benefit when you go to a PPO provider. There are several classes of service that offer a lower coinsurance or a higher level of benefit to go to a PPO provider. And there is no deductible when you go to a PPO provider on any of the services. The Delta Dental Premier providers are also participating with Delta Dental, but they are considered non-PPO. So these providers participate with Delta Dental, but they do not accept the lower Delta Dental PPO approved amount. So you will pay your coinsurance plus the difference between the Delta Dental PPO and the Delta Dental Premier approved amounts. There is no balance billing between the Delta Dental Premier approved amount and the submitted amount. Because this is a participating provider, these providers are also paid directly. When you go to a Delta Dental Premier provider, the deductible will apply to basic and major services. The last type of provider is the non-participating provider. These providers do not participate with Delta Dental and will likely cost you the most money. When you go to a non-participating provider, you are ultimately responsible for making sure the provider receives their full charge. The provider can balance bill you up to that full charge. There will be a deductible that applies to basic and major services. You may have to submit your claim. Please be sure to ask the provider office if they will submit the claim for you or if that's something that you need to do. You'll know that you're going to a non-participating provider if when you go to the dentist, we send you a check in your name with a reimbursement. We only do that when you're going to a non-participating provider. So in order for you to get your reimbursement, you need to make sure that the claim gets submitted to Delta Dental. This slide compares the three types of providers, Delta Dental PPO, Delta Dental Premier, and non-PAR side by side, and you can see their differences there. In addition, you can see the locations and the number of unique dentists that are available in our participating networks, the Delta Dental PPO and the Delta Dental Premier. One note that I want to make with regards to this is that a provider can be both a Delta Dental PPO and a Delta Dental Premier provider. So there can be some overlap in their network status. When a provider participates in both the Delta Dental PPO and the Delta Dental Premier network, when the claim comes into pay, will automatically pay as the PPO provider. So you will get the higher level of benefit and the deeper discount on that claim. So be looking for that as you're going through the participating statuses of the providers. Just some additional provider information. Your dental plan allows for access to participating providers across the United States. So if you spend certain periods of the year in a different location, or if you're just traveling on vacation, if you need to have dental services, you can access or you can locate a Delta Dental participating provider all across the U.S. However, the claim needs to be submitted to Delta Dental of Michigan to process and pay, since that's where your benefit is located. You also have coverage outside of the U.S., but all claims are considered non-participating, so the claim can be submitted for reimbursement. Make sure you provide as much information as possible for that reimbursement. As I mentioned earlier, a provider that has both Delta Dental PPO and Delta Dental Premier participating network status will automatically pay as a PPO provider, which is a higher level of benefit, deeper discounts when that claim is submitted. Another note is that an office can have both a Delta Dental Premier and a Delta Dental PPO provider within it. So if you are wanting to see the PPO provider that is in that office, make sure that you let that provider office know. Participating status is based on provider and location, not by office. So how does your cost share work? We've taken a look at the types of providers, and we've taken a look at your benefit levels. So let's take a look at a payment example and put all of these things together. This is a major services payment example, which is a crown. We'll look at each of the types of providers and how the claim would pay. So if you look at that first line, under the green line, which says Delta Dental PPO dentist, the charge for this provider charges $950 for this crown. Because this provider participates in the Delta Dental PPO network, the approved amount for this claim is $675 for this crown. Because the provider participates with Delta Dental PPO, they cannot charge the difference between $950 and $675. They cannot balance bill that difference. Because this is a PPO provider, you also have a $0 deductible. The coinsurance, which is 25%, is 25% of $675, which is the PPO approved amount, which means the coinsurance is $168.75. There is no additional cost for you because you are going to a Delta Dental PPO provider, so you pay for this crown $168.75. If you went to a Delta Dental Premier dentist, which is the next row down, this provider also charges $950 for this crown. The approved amount for a Delta Dental Premier provider is $898. So this provider, because they participate in Delta Dental Premier, they cannot balance bill you the difference between $898 and $950. On this claim, under your member cost share information, there is a $50 deductible. Because you're going to a Delta Dental Premier provider, and this is a basic service, there's a one-time $50 deductible for the calendar year. So you have a $50 deductible. The way the deductible works is we take the $50 from the $675, the PPO approved amount. Because remember, I indicated earlier that the PPO approved amount, which in this case, this example is $675, is paid on all claims, regardless of the type of provider that you go to. So we take the $50 off the $675, so your coinsurance of 25% is applied to $625. So your coinsurance is $156.25. In addition to the deductible and your coinsurance, there's an additional cost. And the additional cost is the difference between the Delta Dental Premier approved amount of $898 and $675, which is the PPO approved amount, which is what the claim is being paid at. So you pay an additional $223. So the total between the deductible, coinsurance, and additional cost is $429.25 that you pay for this crown by going to a Delta Dental Premier provider. The last type of provider is the non-participating dentist, and in this example, the non-participating dentist also charges $950. However, a non-participating dentist could charge whatever they want. If they charged $1,300 for this, you would ultimately be responsible for making sure the dentist received a total of $1,300. In this example, however, the charge is $950. The non-participating dentist can charge $950. So you will see here as we look at the member cost share information, again, there's a $50 deductible because you're going to a non-participating dentist. For the coinsurance, we take the PPO approved amount of $675, subtract the $50 deductible, and multiply that by your 25% coinsurance for a total of $156.25. And the additional cost that you have for a non-participating dentist is the difference between the non-participating dentist approved amount of $950, which is the total charge, and the PPO approved amount of $675. So you'll pay an additional $275 for this claim. So between the deductible, the coinsurance, and the additional cost, your out-of-pocket for this crown, if you go to a non-participating dentist, would be $481.25. Although this is simply an example, this shows you how the claims makes a difference on what type of provider you go to and how that claim will pay. So you will save the most money when you go to a Delta Dental PPO provider. The second example that we have is a diagnostic and preventive payment example. This would just be a cleaning. We chose this example because there is no deductible for any type of provider. Preventative services do not have a deductible. So if we take a look at this, going through this slide, the Delta Dental PPO dentist has a $90 charge. The approved amount for this is $55. So there is no deductible. The coinsurance is 5%, so it's 5% of $55, which is $275. There's no additional cost because that PPO provider has agreed to accept the PPO approved amount as payment in full, so you will pay $2.75. The Delta Dental Premier provider, they also charge $90, but the approved amount for the Delta Dental Premier dentist is $77. So you're receiving a discount, but it's not as deep as the discount in the Delta Dental PPO. There is no deductible on this claim because it's a preventive service. Your coinsurance for a Delta Dental Premier provider is 10%, so it's 10% of $55. Remember, $55 is the PPO approved amount, and that's what's being reimbursed on each and every claim. And the additional cost that you pay here is the difference between the Delta Dental Premier approved amount of $77 and the Delta Dental PPO approved amount of $55. So your total between the deductible, the coinsurance, and additional cost is $27.50. And lastly, with the non-participating, they also charge $90, and they can receive the total of $90 for the approved amount. There is no deductible because it's a preventive service. There's a 10% coinsurance on the cleaning, so it's 10% of $55, which is the PPO approved fee that is paid on each and every claim. The additional cost you have for a non-participating provider is the difference between the non-participating dentist approved amount of $90 and the $55 for the Delta Dental PPO approved amount. So you pay a total between your deductible, coinsurance, and additional cost of $40.50. So you can see here again, it does make a difference. You had a smaller amount of coinsurance for the Delta Dental PPO provider, which gave you a higher level of benefit. So you're going to save the most money when you go to a Delta Dental PPO provider. We wanted to provide you with information on helpful resources. We have put together a plan-specific member website. This is also referred to as an extranet site. The link to this site is located on the Office of Retirement Services website under Dental Benefits. It can also be accessed directly at the address listed there, www.deltadentalmi.com/MPSERS. This member website will provide specific information about your retirement system dental plan. It gives you access to written plan documentation. You'll be able to view this presentation. It gives you the link to search a dentist directory for a provider and gives you the instructions on how to do that, and also provides a link to the Consumer Toolkit. The Consumer Toolkit is a secure website that allows you to access your specific dental information once you create an account. Once you create an account, you will be able to verify your eligibility status. You can confirm the address that we have on file. You can access your retirement system benefit overview. You can view and print specific explanation of benefits. You can check your annual maximum use to date. You can print your personalized ID card. You can also sign up for electronic EOBs on this site. If you sign up for electronic EOBs and you provide us an email address, we will send you an email once your claim is processed to let you know that it's available for viewing on the Consumer Toolkit. You can also look for a provider online. In fact, that is the best way to find a provider because it has the most up-to-date information. When you look for a provider online, it allows you to do a radius search so you can find the providers that are closest to you. If you go to the extranet site that we talked about 2 slides ago at deltadentalmi.com/MPSERS, there is a document that provides step-by-step directions on how to search for a provider. When you're looking for a provider, you can choose the specific specialty. So you can choose all, or you can choose a general dentist or an oral surgeon or a periodontist or endodontist. You can also choose the network. So if you are trying to find a PPO provider that is a periodontist, you can choose periodontist and Delta Dental PPO and do the search. The search will also allow you to add additional search criteria or to change your request. So you can change your specialty, you can change your network. You can also put in an address. As I indicated earlier, when you put in your address, it will do a radius search around that address to tell you the providers that are closest to you. Once you have the results, you can go through those results and print those results or save those results if you want to take a closer look at those. We also have a smartphone app. We know how you all like to have your information right at your hands. Once you've created your member account to use the app, you can review coverage and claims information right on your phone. You can use a cost estimator. You can find a dentist. It's the same dentist search that you can do online. And you can view your mobile ID card. This option or this app is available for Apple, iOS, and Android users. So you can visit the stores for each of those devices and search for Delta Dental. There are things that you can do every day to help you save your smile. You can brush at least twice a day, floss regularly, avoid the use of tobacco and limit alcohol use, drink fluoridated water, visit your dentist regularly, and talk to your dentist if you notice any changes or abnormalities. There are over 120 diseases that have signs and symptoms that show up in your mouth. So your dentist might be the first one to notice that something's going on with the rest of your body. So make sure that you mention if you see something too that seems unusual so your dentist can take a closer look at that. In conclusion, Delta Dental is available to assist members and answer their questions. You can reach our customer service department by calling the toll-free number listed above. In addition, our advisors are available from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. We also have an automated system that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this can provide you with a variety of information that you can access directly. The website address shown here at www.deltadentalmi.com/MPSERS. Lastly, don't forget to check out the Learning Center on this virtual site. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope that I've been able to provide you with the information that you need so that you can use your dental plan better. Thank you.